Hey there, I'm Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith with an update on what's happening with Hurricane Milton as it's now close to making landfall. The eye wall is on shore and we're starting to see the storm surge values increasing, especially on the southern and southeastern flank of the system from Naples on up into the Fort Myers area. We're also starting to see some storm surge as high up as about Venice, Florida. On the northern edge, no surge yet in Tampa or in Bradenton, but very heavy rain there and wind. We have an extreme wind warning for the eye wall of the system, and you can see it on the satellite imagery right there. No well-defined eye at this point because there has been some interaction with an upper level trough, which has lowered the maximum sustained winds a little bit. But what it has also done is it's allowed the wind field to basically double in size, and in some cases more than double. So we saw the winds go from about 100 miles from center with the tropical storm force winds now to 255 miles from the center. It's a very large system, and the tropical storm conditions are basically over the entire Florida peninsula, from Jacksonville to Lake City to the Big Bend, and then all the way down through Tampa and Orlando and all the way down near Miami and even the Keys. We are going to see the most intense part of this definitely anywhere from, it looks like, near the Cape Coral area up to about Tampa, and then inland from there as it approaches Kissimmee, St. Cloud, and the Orlando area. All right, so let's see here. We'll back out a little bit. We're going to switch it over to the black enhanced IR so you can get one more look at the satellite picture. What we're seeing here is a lot of deep convection now beginning to spread over the Tampa area and just offshore out into the Gulf. That's where the highest cloud tops are, the coldest cloud tops. Some of the southern flank of the system not as well developed because that dry air is wrapping in on the southern flank. We kind of expected this. It's basically going about like we expected. It's looking pretty rough with what we're seeing so far and some of the reports coming back from areas down around Sarasota and Bradenton. There is an extreme wind warning along the northern eye wall because there is more convection on the northern flank, and the northeast quadrant is actually coming through now, and so there are extreme winds associated with Milton, 115 plus, and so it basically is like a tornado has come through. Speaking of tornadoes, we saw some pretty horrible tornadoes today in the outer bands ahead of Milton and along the leading edge of Milton from the east coast of Florida all the way over to the west coast, and the entire peninsula is seeing reports of tornadoes. We saw video confirmation of tornadoes, some very large tornadoes, very strong tornadoes, not the little weak EF0s that you often see with the tropical system. This is a look at radar here, and part of the eye wall is coming ashore. This is the composite reflectivity, so it's not going to have a lot of definition to it. And notice that down around Fort Myers, we're not seeing a lot of rain right now. We are getting some light tropical showers. We're looking at some horrible wind right now. And so the wind is just starting to back around out of the south and the west, and that's what's going to drive the water up out of the Gulf. And with fast-moving systems, sometimes we see a delay with the storm surge as well. So unfortunately, it's going to get worse from where we are right now. And where we're headed, anywhere from about Bradenton south, we've got serious storm surge concerns, and that's going to include Boca Grande and Port Charlotte. Now, the composite reflectivity, it appears that the eye is ashore and that it's making landfall, but it looks like we're still a little ways from the center of the eye crossing shore. And I want to bring up the high level reflectivity, and so this is going to be the reflectivity from the radar that's located in Tampa. So this is going to be a high res view, and we could actually kind of track along here, and it looks like the eye is still basically offshore. There may be a portion of the eye that's coming in around Venice, the eye wall around Sarasota, and then Bradenton getting the northern eye wall. Tampa, it's looking pretty terrible. Look at all the red on the radar here over Tampa Bay, and there is often a lot of wind associated with that bright banding on radar. When we see high levels of reflectivity, that means there's a lot of showers, some thunderstorms mixed in too, a lot of power flashes also, and within that, those convective bands. That's where we see typically a lot of the most intense wind. So we're likely going to see a lot of wind damage in Bradenton and Ruskin and some of these areas here, and then that's going to continue inland. There's Bradenton there. Looks like you're still within the eye wall in Bradenton, if not quite there yet. Sarasota probably getting into that eye wall right now. The Venice, Florida area is seeing the eye about to push over you, and a very intense wind starting to back around out of the south and the southwest, which is terrible. And then the Tampa area right now, I think we're going to escape the worst surge in Tampa because it's just going to be in a different quadrant of the storm, but we're still going to see tides above normal, and we can see some problems up into Tampa Bay. And the rainfall, the rain is driving, the wind is driving the rain in a really big way into Tampa right now, and you can see that here. I mean, it's going to be a 10 to 15 inch rain event here in Tampa and St. Pete. Seeing the heavy rain there, and on the north side too, up towards Lake Magdalene. And then we go further to the south. That's where the worst of it's going to come ashore here. And we are looking at the system continuing here. And I want to bring in the latest statistics on the storm. So you're probably wondering, where it's at, and it was a Category 5 storm last night with winds up to about 165. The winds have backed off some, but the wind field has grown. So I don't know. I mean, either way is really bad. And this is a Category 3, which is a very serious hurricane. It is moving east-northeast at 15. It's almost stopped the northeast motion, and we're kind of seeing a little motion change there. Some of the models were suggesting it would move more east-northeasterly across the peninsula, which would keep the core of the storm a little south of Tampa, kind of right where we're expecting there around Sarasota. Storm surge values will be higher south of Tampa Bay. They could be as much as 8 to 12 feet almost to Tampa Bay. We've got up to, looks like 9-foot line there in Tampa Bay, and that's still a crazy surge. There are a lot of, and the whole area is overbuilt. If you've ever been down there, there's a lot of waterfront property, there are a lot of canals, and so there's extreme vulnerability to storm surge. And that's not just for Tampa, but there are a lot of well-developed communities, high population density down through Sarasota and towards Port Charlotte. So this is an area where you don't want to see a major hurricane coming ashore. You don't want to see that anywhere, but especially where there are a lot of houses, there could be a lot of destruction. And I mentioned Venice and Port Charlotte, and so you can kind of see some of those communities as we zoom in, and the possibility of surge, really from Bradenton down to Port Charlotte along the Gulf front. It looks like about 10 to 15 feet of surge is possible. Outside of that, there will be a little zone where we can see 8 to 12. We've got Tampa Bay a little lower than that, lower than 9 feet, because you're going to get more of an offshore flow of wind there. So that's going to help a lot. And we've seen the tide gauges really coming up in as we work our way into Fort Myers and Bonita Springs and further south. Naples has seen a sharp rise in tide. I mentioned the wind field expanding, and so the orange area is about the size of the wind field yesterday, and then the yellow area is the sign of the tropical storm force winds as of 10 o'clock tonight. It's more than doubled, and tropical storm force conditions are basically possible anywhere from Apalachicola to Jacksonville to Miami. I mean, this is a huge wind event, and the winds tend to want to spread out as storms interact with upper level troughs and begin to make that extratropical transition. So it's kind of normal. We saw it with Hurricane Sandy. We've seen it with a number of systems. We see it all the time out in the Atlantic, and that is unfortunately unfolding in Florida. Now, locally in Mobile, Pensacola, if you're a Central Gulf Coast viewer watching us, we'll see some rough surf at the beach again tomorrow. It'll be a little better Friday, and it'll be over with Saturday, and that's it. We're dry as a bone. A little gusty wind situation today, but a big front coming through. And we expect that the peak winds still going on, hurricane conditions possible through about 7 a.m. tomorrow. As this thing moves out into the Atlantic, it will fall apart, but the damage will be done. And this is the official track from the National Hurricane Center. It's going to be a close call for places like Orlando, Disney World. Probably going to see some power outages, a lot of issues in Kissimmee, St. Cloud too, and the northern flank of the systems where we have most of the convection. That means a lot of rain, some flooding, and some wind. Here's a look at your local beach forecast. 86 tomorrow with a high risk of rip currents, a medium rip current risk Friday, and a low risk Saturday. We've got great fall weather here. I know it's kind of hard to enjoy it when we're tracking such a horrible hurricane for Florida, but we're just coming out great locally. We got 83 on Friday, 82 Saturday, and yeah, are you ready for some lows in the 50s? We're going to see it, and we'll have some even cooler weather next week. Tuesday and Wednesday's highs will be in the mid 70s, and we'll be in the 50s at night, so we've got some really cool weather to experience there. And I'm going to put it back over on the radar view here, and that's what I'll leave you with here on this update, just to show you what's going on radar as we are looking at a very substantial hurricane coming ashore now, and the radar showing that we're looking right there into Sarasota. Let me loop it for you and just see what we're seeing here. We're not getting the tornadic activity. That's kind of over with. That was mainly along the leading edge with the supercell storms that are out over the Atlantic. We will have to watch a little further up for possibly some tornadoes, but here we go. So right now we've got the eye almost ashore. It hasn't technically made landfall yet. I'm going to check with the National Hurricane Center and see if they put anything out on that. Looks like my mic fell down, so I hope you could hear me for most of this. I think you probably could. So NHC, and you can get these updates on Twitter as well. Close to landfall was the 7 o'clock advisory, but not ashore just yet. That's probably going to happen between now and about 7:30. That would be my best guess, is that we'll actually get a landfall point, and I would say it's most likely going to be somewhere around Sarasota. There's, let's see here, yeah, they may call it for Sarasota. Looks like there's a little community south of there. Whoop, I zoomed in a little too much. Let's see what happened here. Okay. Yeah, I think Sarasota would probably be the most likely scenario. There's a community called Osprey there, but Siesta Key, they may call it for Siesta Key. So somewhere right in there, the National Hurricane Center actually makes the determination of the point of landfall, and that'll be where the center of the eye crosses shore. That should happen soon, probably between now and 7:30. And then after that, it'll keep rolling on. So the storm doesn't just happen when it makes landfall and end right after that minute. It's something that happens leading up to landfall and then continues into the night in this particular case. So we're going to have an update on Fox 10 News at 9 p.m. and you can check out our morning show tomorrow morning as we continue to cover the damage in Florida with our morning team and meteorologist Nicholas Herboso. So we're going to be covering this for you here on Fox 10 News. Thanks for joining us for our live stream.